Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us and welcome to our Integrated Eligibility webinar with the Community Partner Outreach Program. Today, we are going to be covering some of the new features of the upgraded One system. It's the medical application for the combined medical programs. It's what you have all been using since July, but there are some new features in it compared to the old system now that all the programs are integrated together, and we'd like to cover some of those and go deeper into them and take your questions and answer what we can. So today we have a host of folks on the webinar with us. And what we're going to be covering, is what you as community partners can help people apply for. Many of you probably know that, but we just want to set the stage. And then the upgraded features of the new application that we're going to be going deeper into are things like living arrangement, resources, asset verification, some pieces of the income and deductions screens, and then we're going to touch on long-term care, interviews, and a teaser for future information on things like lookbacks, penalties, and estate recovery. These are all new features of this upgraded applicant portal, upgraded One system. And we want to make sure you have what you need to be able to help your clients apply effectively and help them navigate their coverage and their care. We do have a bunch of people on this webinar with us today, and my screens keep jumping ahead. So we have folks from external communications. I'm not going to name them individually, but I'm going to tell you who the teams are that we have here. We have people from external communications. You'll actually hear from Jason in just a minute. We have processing teams. We have folks from our policy teams for the different types of medical that are available in the applicant portal. We have Jessica and Deanna from the OHA Community Partner Outreach Program, and we also have some other integrated eligibility subject matter experts so that we can make sure we can answer as many of your questions in our live Q&A at the end of this webinar as possible. So we're going to start with Jason with our external communications group, and he's going to cover some terminology that you may have heard, and we want to make sure we're all on the same page about it.
Welcome, Jason. Can you hear me okay?
Sure can.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. My name is Jason Simpson. I've spoken to this group before. It's nice to be here again. So I'm just going to go over some of the terminology associated with One, since you may hear the system being referred to in a couple of different ways. I sometimes mess some of these things up, so please don't feel badly if you've used any of these and you're not sure about which way to talk about it. We're all getting used to the new system and some of its options. So obviously the first thing I want to talk about is Magi One. This is the older version of One that OHP Processing Center used prior to July 6th of last year. And then you may also hear One referred to as integrated or upgraded One. And this is obviously the system that allows all these programs to be accessed together by ODHS eligibility staff and customers. And also you can just use One on its own, and that would be correct too. Prior to July 6th, as you know, we had One in the OHP Processing Center, processing OHP or Magi eligibility. On July 6th, we started with the One upgrade and the One Customer Service Center pilot. And this mostly had to do with us upgrading our former One system and adding in the functionality for former Medical Processing Center staff to be able to process all programs. On July 6th, we upgraded that, allowing workers at the VEC to process applications for medical, food, cash, and childcare benefits. And I'll come to what the VEC is here in a minute. And then next, we launched our storefront office pilot in Grants Pass on August 3rd. And this consisted of one SSP office and one APD office, where staff there began using One to process all benefits for residents and their zip codes. And on September 21st, we chose select offices in District 6 and 8, which is Jackson, Josephine, and some parts of Douglas counties for the One applicant portal online to be launched. And this is a huge part of the rollout. And then on November 2nd, as you know, we launched our biggest phase. That was 21 counties, including SSP, APD, and Type B AAA offices, where they started using One, and customers in that area were able to apply for all benefits with one application, either in person, online, or over the phone. And we launched our last phase on February 1st, and that was obviously the Portland Metro and the remaining counties in the state. Some of the other terms that you're going to hear associated with this, IE is one that we use a lot. This was the technology portion of the upgrade. This was us contracting with Deloitte to get the computer systems changed over, rolling over former records and putting them in the new system. Eligibility transformation is another term you're going to hear. And this is kind of the people part of the process, right? So the first one was the computer side, and this is how we work with our staff and also our business processes internally. The next term you might hear often is SFO, and that's storefront office. And this is mostly an internal term. This is just any local office in your neighborhood. And the primary focus there is to manage walk-in customers and help them with interviews at the time. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the VEC, as I mentioned before, that's the Virtual Eligibility Center. We tend to use this term internally, and this is where our eligibility workers determine eligibility. This is the former processing centers. We also have the One Customer Service Center, which we use a lot. This is the external name for the VEC, basically the same thing. The One Customer Service Center is open from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Pacific time, and the phone number is there for any questions that you may have. Another one is the applicant portal. That's one.oregon.gov, and this is where Oregonians apply for medical, food, cash, and childcare benefits. They can also see their account statuses and check any notices that may be there in their account. And then lastly, you might hear worker portal. And this is the worker or staff-facing side of the integrated one system. This is where staff completes intakes on new applications, determines financial eligibility and benefit amounts, manages their benefits, processes case changes. So some of these terms we've maybe kind of used them a little bit interchangeably. Again, you can just use one when you're referring to the system. You don't even need to say one system, and if you want. But those are some of the terms you're going to hear probably throughout today and ongoing. If you have any questions, obviously we're always here to help you with that. I think that means my slides. I'm going to turn it over to the next presenter. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Jason. I think this is good because a lot of you are maybe new to the applicant portal or to the one system, and some of you are really seasoned, but you may be starting to hear some of these terms. So thank you, Jason, for reviewing them. I think it's good to get all on the same page. So just as a review, I think most of you know this, but I want to make sure. There's something it's not showing. Okay, so when somebody goes to one.oregon.gov, that's the public-facing applicant portal, they can now apply for all of these benefits: SNAP, TANF, the ERDC, which is the employment-related daycare and childcare, and medical assistance, which is what you help people apply for, and then there's some other programs as well. But today, what we're going to talk about is just the programs that are in the medical application that you can help people apply for, and where we're going to see some changes. So we're just talking about medical assistance today. And when you help somebody apply in the applicant portal, you're helping them apply now for all of the medical programs, not just the MAGI, which is the traditional OHP programs that you helped with in the past, but also the non-MAGI benefits. That's OSIP-M, which is the version of OHP for blind, disabled, and those 65 and over, but also for the Medicare savings programs. And I do want to take a moment to really talk about the medical savings programs because this helps people apply for Medicare premiums. And we're going to give a special nod to them in just a moment, but I want to call it out because it's really different than what we've helped people apply for in the past. And there are long-term care services that people can apply for through this application. We'll show you which screen is critical to requesting long-term care services and how that works. And we want to make sure that it's clear to everybody that different medical programs have different eligibility criteria. That is why the upgraded one system asks so many more questions than in the past. I shouldn't say so many, but it asks more questions. It must ask them in order to accommodate the eligibility for the additional programs that are now contained in the one system. This is just a graphic that we found that we thought was useful. These are all the Medicaid packages that are in the one system now and that you can help your clients apply for, right? CALM, MAGI OHP, which is the traditional OHP, the OSIP-M, which is the OHP for blind, disabled, and 65 and over. You can also, long-term care, actually people on MAGI or non-MAGI OHP, the purple and the green, can both get long-term care. It's the same long-term care package, regardless of which type of OHP you're on. And the Medicare Savings Program, programs rather. These programs help Oregonians pay out-of-pocket Medicare costs. They're available through the one as a non-MAGI medical program. And I did hear a little statistic, I don't know how old it is, that only about 25 or maybe a little bit more now, people who are eligible for the Medicare savings programs are actually receiving them. I don't think people widely know about this. What it means for you as community partners is that if somebody is 65 or older and they're on Medicare, or if they're on Medicare at all, there is an additional program they can apply for through you. And it's to help them pay for their Medicare premium and help cover some of the copays or deductibles for Medicare approved services. There are 3 levels, and I'm not going to go into those levels right now, but we're outlining them here. But I think the long and short of it is really there may be something for everybody in this new upgraded one system. And whereas you used to refer people that were 65 or over to APD, you no longer should do that or have to do that, because now you can help them apply through your one applicant portal. We're going to go over a few pieces of the applicant portal application that are upgraded. So we're going to first start with living arrangement, resources, income and deductions, and long-term care. The first thing I want to say is that you should always continue to use the who to put on the application guidance. We're not including it in this webinar because it remains the same. It's in your getting started guide, it's in the paper application, it's on the applicant portal, and it's very important to get that right so that you can get an accurate eligibility determination. So still always use that who to put on the application. But the one system now captures additional information about the people on the application regarding their living arrangements. The reason we do this is that living arrangement also has implications for other programs, and it has implications for some of the non-Magi programs. And some things are included here that also have implications for the Magi programs. So it will always populate, and it's new, and ODHS needs to know whether people live in the same home or not in order to determine eligibility accurately for all the different programs. So we're not going to go into a lot of detail here. I think most of them are self-explanatory. If you do have questions about any of them because you think you come across them, feel free to put them into the chat box. We might be able to answer your questions now or later, but I think hopefully this is self-explanatory for most people applying. All right, the next big piece that's different in the application is that we now ask about resources. So of course the non-Magi programs have always asked about resources, but because they're now included into the one system must ask about resources. And we're not going to go into detail about all of the resources, but we are going to talk to you about how the resources get verified and what kinds of information your applicants need to supply in order to complete their application. But this is a list of all of the resources that the one asks about. And we want to touch on 2 common ones. So we have cars and property that we just want to touch on. Now, the guideline is that all of those resources need to be need to be reported for every applicant. You as a community partner don't need to screen about whether they need to report it or not. If it's listed and they have it, they must report it. There is help text on there's help text on the applicant portal. The little, I had an icon here to show you. I'm not sure what happened to it. There it is. Look at that. It was animated. Didn't mean to have that be animated, but it's a little question mark. You can click on the question mark in the applicant portal and it will give you more information about those resources. That is one of the new features of this applicant portal, one system. If somebody doesn't know all the details about the resource, they know they have it or they think they have it, but they're not sure, they should just click, I have this, but don't know the details, even if they're not sure if they have it. That is better than guessing. What will happen is these resources are relevant to the non-Magi programs. They're always going to get, or almost always going to get pended for an interview. And it's during that interview that they can supply the rest of the information about those resources. So some of the common resources are cars and property. And I've heard some questions about those, so I wanted to address them up front. The first thing is that one exempts one primary vehicle per driving person from resources. It's the extra vehicles that then get counted as a resource. One also exempts one primary residence per family, and it's additional properties that get counted as resources. And one knows that. So if you just enter one car, one will not count that car because they know that the first car per driving person would get exempted. But if somebody adds additional cars and it's unclear as to who those cars belong to or how many drivers there are, those details will be verified in the interview. So better to enter more information and then clarify it during the interview. But if somebody does enter additional or non-primary vehicles or additional or non-primary properties, those do count as assets or resources. And assets and resources are synonymous. They're the same thing, so we might use them interchangeably. And they do count toward the non-MAGI medical programs. Now, when somebody reports these assets, CMS requires us as an agency to verify those reported assets or resources. And so what workers at ODHS will do is they will attempt to verify those resources by submitting the applicant's information to something called the Asset Verification System. That system runs to verify resources, not income. It only looks at resources. And it checks U.S. financial institutions for accounts, property, etc., that the applicant has ownership in or even part ownership in. In order to run that, we need permission from the applicant. And running that is a condition of eligibility. So the applicant really must submit an extra form to give us permission, and it's called the AVS form. It must be submitted to get benefits. So many of you may have seen this, so we really wanted to take time to cover it. Again, we need permission from the client to run AVS through the form MSC 2639. That 2639 has always been required for medical programs requiring a resource test. But now it's included in the one system. It's required at initial application, and it's valid ongoing unless the case closes or is denied or somebody asks to remove that consent. So they just have to do it once. That's my understanding. Of course, we have subject matter experts that will chime in and correct me if I'm wrong. And each person must give permission to have their resources verified, which means that if people are married, the spouse must sign also, which is really different than the application itself, where you just need a primary applicant signature. So each person must sign. And the CPs cannot sign this form remotely on behalf of a client. The client needs to either sign it, or I believe the client can also give verbal permission over the phone with the processing center. So of course the question is, where do we find this, right? It's what some of you are putting into the questions box. This form is included in the 7210 paper application packet, so you can always grab it from there. You can Xerox it from there. It's also a standalone form on the OHA DHS form server, so you can get it from your form server. If you have any questions about that, you can contact your regional outreach coordinator or just Google OHS DHS forms server. It will also be sent as an RFI for any applicants being evaluated for a resource test. It will actually be sent to them, and they'll need to sign it and send it back. This RFI, interestingly, does not show up in the applicant portal at this time. So whereas you might see an RFI for proof of immigration status, you will not see an RFI for this form. That makes things a little bit sticky, and we're not sure the timeline on when it might show. Maybe our subject matter experts can chime in on that. But right now, you need to know that it won't show in the AP as an outstanding task. So that's why we're really bringing it up here. We make sure you know about it. The form is available on the form server in all of the same languages as the 7210. And what I would like to know from our subject matter experts, hopefully somebody can unmute and chime in, is can an applicant call in and fill out this form verbally with an eligibility worker?
Hey, this is Janelle. Yes, they can call in, and we can capture the signature with the recorded telephonic signature system through the one system.
Okay, Thank you. And can this form be mailed in and faxed in and submitted in all the same ways as other forms like the application?
Yes, they can put a physical signature on the form and then mail, fax, email, however they want like that.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, we'll take more questions at the end. So after AVS is run, so we have resources, people get pended for verification, they submit the form and give the agency permission to verify resources. And then after that AVS is run, there may be more information needed. There are two circumstances that will produce an RFI for resource verification. So if AVS is run and finds discrepant information, meaning let's say the client reported they have a savings account worth $1,000 and the resource limit for eligibility is $2,000. When we run AVS, we actually find an account for $3,000. That's discrepant information because the amount we found would actually make them not eligible based on the criteria. So then we have to generate an RFI to figure out the discrepancy and figure out which one is correct. Now, if the AVS is run and finds a resource that would still put them within eligibility range, that does not generate an RFI. So discrepant information here is specifically when we find a resource that would make the client not eligible, then we need more information. Now, the other time we're going to need more information or an RFI from the client is if AVS finds undisclosed resources that were not reported at all. Both of these result in a hard pend, and if a client does not respond to this RFI for resource verification additional information, they will not get benefits. A little note here is that during the COVID emergency period, we still run AVS. It must be completed, but verbal verification for RFIs is sufficient during this COVID emergency period. Whenever the resources question comes up in the applicant portal, they must be answered. And if there is a request for that form, it must be submitted by all of the, I believe, the adult applicants on the application. Whew. All right, that was a lot. So I hope you all tracked that. And now we're going to move on to a couple other parts of the application, and Jessica is going to take over and start to share some information with you about income.
Thank you so much. All right, 30-second break while we switch over presenters and I get all queued up. One moment.
Can I make you the presenter now, Jessica?
Ooh, monitor 2, wrong monitor. Okay. Quick question, is my monitor, is my presentation showing?
It is. You are good to go.
All right. Okay, I just want to say that I see a lot of really great questions, so I'm excited about getting to those soon. And I'm going to start talking a little bit about income and some of the things that maybe we need to start thinking a little bit differently about income, and just some things to know about getting income successfully and accurately recorded in the application. So when it comes to,
I'm so sorry to interrupt, but before we move on to this, I wanted to make a quick clarification on the AVS.
Mm-hmm.
The form is for anyone whose resources are considered for eligibility, not necessarily all the adults in the household.
Oh, good point.
Thank you very much.
And I can tell we'll be having a robust conversation about AVS again shortly once we get through these next couple slides. So I'm going to move us ahead so that we can return to that as soon as possible. So one of the biggest things for our seasoned community partners to sort of rethink, and I have had to rethink this as well, is that when we were only doing Magi programs, there was actually a fair amount of filtering we did. We knew what kind of income counted and where it would count and how to report it. And so there were income types that back in the day, we used to say, do not include this because it does not count. That is no longer the case because the one system is running rules for so many different programs, medical and non-medical, we want to make sure we don't accidentally leave out a key piece of income, even if we think it may not be countable. That's something that we should not be filtering. We should be letting the one system do that, because one has gotten a lot smarter with this new upgrade. And so if we don't filter but accurately put in the different income types, then it will be making the right determination and counting the right types of income. And this includes some types of, I think they're technically, most of these are self-employment income types that are collecting cans, if you're busking, you're a street performer, donating plasma, and if you are receiving gifts, and that part goes into unearned. So just a few examples of the types of income that maybe we did not record in the past, but we do need to accurately report now. So as I said, the one income rules engine is a lot smarter than it was in the past. So we do have a lot more functionality on the back end. I know that we've done a separate webinar where we talked about some different COVID rules and things that we're seeing more and more now due to the pandemic period. Please know that we do have a resource, which is a guide to common COVID income types that has a little bit more information about how to put those types of income into the application. But we're not going to go into that in depth today. When we talk about the medical application, we usually split it up into what we call monthly income and annual income. So I'm going to talk about monthly income first. And we call it monthly income not because people get paid once a month. It's because that is the income test we are running, is we're looking for how much someone makes in a given month. This month, next month, usually are the ones we're looking at first. We have 5 different types of income, and one of them is technically not an income, so bear with me here. And this is how the one system is now splitting up the monthly income screens. We have earned income, which is usually, salary, wage, job income that is paid by an employer. We have unearned income, which includes things like Social Security income, if someone has investments, trust, dividends, and alimony or spousal support, that would go into unearned income. Now, self-employment, you might be thinking, that's technically a type of earned income, and the answer is yes, it is. But because the different programs that the one evaluates have different rules and different things they need to do, and they is, I'm now anthropomorphizing a computer program, so we had to separate it out so that the system could accurately sort of slice and dice these different types of income. Self-employment is separately listed. It is a type of earned income. And know that there is a little guide in the application that helps you figure out if something should go into the earned or self-employment sections. So self-employment is you have your own business, you might be an independent contractor, you do not have a boss. It also includes some of those less formal income types such as collecting cans. And it is separated out, and we have a tool to help you successfully navigate that and to help the public successfully navigate that. Then we get to specific income, which includes things like child support, which I'm calling out specifically because it's something that we used to keep off of applications in the Magi world, but now we do need to include it. Any income from any childcare related work, and any stipends. And this is just a few examples of a larger category. And the reason it's called specific income is because it specifically didn't fall neatly into the other categories. Different programs need to know different pieces of it. And once again, in order to get the one system to successfully slice and dice it, we put it in its own category so all that work could be done. I am just going to say that unemployment is a big one that I should have put on here. That counts as an unearned income type. So thank you for asking that question. And then finally, unpaid work activity. This screen, the one system is dynamic, so it will only show the unpaid work activity screen if someone is being evaluated for non-Magi, if you're doing a medical only application. So just know that that's a screen that may or may not show up depending on what you've put into the application previously. And I think that one's pretty self-explanatory. It's if you are doing work but not getting paid to do the work. So if you are volunteering or some sort of internship, and there are some programs in non-Magi that do need to know about unpaid work activity. So those are the different monthly income screens. There's a gatepost question. There's a gatepost screen at the front that asks about all of these, and anyone who you say has this type of income or unpaid work activity, then it'll populate additional screens. And if you want to go into detail on that, I highly recommend our OHP enrollment and application training that we give our new assisters, because it goes into a lot more detail. Next, we come to annual income. And there's some things to know about annual income in this new one system. Annual income screen separates income differently than in the monthly screens. So instead of having those 5 categories, instead it's 3 categories. It's separated out by earned, unearned, and Social Security income. Earned includes both self-employment and any job income. Unearned includes all of the things except Social Security, which is now in a separate category. And so just be very aware of the fact that this is a different, I call it slicing and dicing because I'm a very technical person, a different slicing and dicing than the previous screens. So it really does help to jot down those different types of income in advance while you're going through those monthly income screens, because it does not load any of the information from the other screens. It will show up 100% of the time completely blank, and it will show up for all household members, and we're going to have to put in 2 years of information on it. And that's pretty similar to a past version of the annual income screen that we had. I do want to talk, sorry, I went a little bit out of order. Also, so in addition to the 3 different types of income, there is one section for expenses and deductions, and those all get added together. Some good news about the annual income screen is that there is this text at the top of the screen that has some really helpful guidelines for us all, which is right at the top right now. Because of the COVID-19 emergency, it talks about do not include stimulus checks, but do include unemployment payments, including the federal pandemic unemployment compensation, which was $600 or $300. And that needs to be included in the annual income, and that is countable for annual income. It gets a little bit trickier when we talk about the monthly screens. Just know, put it into the monthly screens as well, and the one system will sort correctly. Another piece that we want to point out about the top of this screen is that it specifically says do not include child support, veterans payments, or supplemental security income. Those do not count towards the annual income test. When we're asking about Social Security income, we're only asking about the other types that are not supplemental security income. So retirement benefits, disability, but not SSI. And I know that that gets confusing. We have some screens to show you with a very specific thing that we want to prep all of you for, which is that self-employment expenses is it's just this slightly trickier thing in income and expenses that has to be listed 3 different times on the application, and we want to show you where that is and what it looks like. So when you are in the self-employment screen, that monthly screen, one of the details it asks for after the category, description of work, frequency, gross income, the expenses using the same frequency that someone gets their income. And that expenses is going to be a positive number you put in that then gets subtracted from the gross income in the calculations. Whoop. That was weird. Self-employment expenses also show up in the expenses and deductions section after the income screens, the monthly income screens, but before the annual income screen. So if you look at the different types of tax deductions, you'll see that one of those is self-employment expenses. That's going to be the exact same number and the exact same frequency as on the income screen that we just looked at. And then finally, on the annual income screen, here is that breakdown of earned income, Social Security, unearned income, and we see that there's also an expense/deduction category that needs to include both self-employment expenses and then also any deductions that someone would be taking on their taxes. And you can see that on this screen there is these little question marks that have additional help text to clarify what we're asking for on this screen. So there is income and expenses, a few things to be aware of, and this slightly tricky situation with self-employment expenses. It's just something we want you all to be aware of. And because I think I missed this talking point previously, I do want to point out that for annual income, we do really care about not only what is happening this month, next month, but also any past or expected future earnings or expenses that someone can reasonably expect to have over a calendar year. We care about the calendar year. And just know that if it does not end up being accurate, as long as someone reports timely, which is within 10 days of knowing that a change has happened, that the information is incorrect, then they should not have consequences, and we will consider that timely reporting. All right, I'm going to transition into some brief information about long-term care and some things associated with it, and then I think that's all that's holding us from the really robust Q&A that I think we're going to have next. Long-term care. So long-term care is a range of services to help people who can no longer meet their own daily needs. And it's you'll often see it internally, and our jargon is LTC is the acronym. So long-term care is available for people who are eligible for either MAGI or OSIPM, OHP plus level of benefits. It includes an assessment that gets triggered only when people answer a specific screen on the application about needing help with daily needs. It is a separate program with its own evaluation, which is called an assessment. And that assessment happens with a separate group of workers than the eligibility folks. So just know that on top of the medical evaluation more broadly, the long-term care assessment will then happen with an APD worker, an aging and people with disabilities worker. And that this could be done for someone who is on OSIPM or someone who is on MAGI medical. And we are preparing for the eventuality that you all probably want to learn a lot more than what I'm going to be able to say today, so watch for more soon. So I mentioned that there's a specific screen that will trigger that long-term care assessment. And here is that question, or that screen, sorry. It has a question: does this person need someone's help with things like walking, using the bathroom, bathing, or dressing? And if you answer yes to that, then an additional question pops up that says, does this person want to be contacted about care services? Both of these need to be marked yes in order to trigger that additional assessment. And we also have the help text here. So there's a little question mark that helps explain. It really reiterates the details up above, but this contact about care services is going to include what help someone needs with these daily activities. Some associated things that we've gotten some questions about are something called a look back or a penalty. And what that means is that someone who's being evaluated for long-term care benefits may have a delay in their eligibility if in the last 5 years, and this is for medical only, they transferred an asset to another person for less than the fair market value of that asset. So the look back is the period of time that the agency looks to search for assets. For medical, that really only applies to long-term care, and that look back is a 5-year period. The penalty is a time frame. So the time a person is disqualified from receiving long-term care services, and it is calculated based on the value of the asset or resource that was transferred and how much less than the fair market value it was transferred at. So an example is if I am transferring a home to a friend, and I am giving them this house for $0. A house is worth a lot more than $0. If I did that 5 years and 1 day ago, long-term care services, when we look back, it's not going to see that or care about that transfer. But if it was 4 years ago, then there will be a penalty of a certain amount of time where I will not be eligible to get long-term care services because I have transferred a really valuable asset at much less than its fair market value. So there's an example of what that might look like. And I think this applies to anything that would be in that resource section of the application. All of those things, penalties may apply to those items if they are gifted or sold for well under their fair market value. Another thing that comes up and relates to long-term care services is estate recovery. I know it's something that looks really scary in the text at the end of the application. Estate recovery means that the agency may seek to recover the costs of medical benefits and long-term care services paid on the behalf of an individual after they pass. Estate recovery is something that applies to long-term care. If someone is receiving long-term care and they pass away, the recoverable costs do include long-term care and then also the medical benefits. There are a lot of rules and details that you can find. Some of those are in the sort of the rights and responsibilities section of the application and the application guide. There's also a specific brochure about estate recovery that you can read through and hand to folks. And there is a special team that is well-versed and does this work. And so we're not going to speak about the details of it, but just know it does exist. There is language on the application about it. It applies to folks who are receiving long-term care services when it comes to the medical application. All right.
I'd also say, Jessica, if it's something
Yes.
that people have, all of these things, we're listening today and we're looking at the questions to see where we should go deeper in the future on topics.
Thank you, Deanna. I know that some folks have had questions about when to expect the applicants or an OHP member to have a request for an interview. And CPOP has worked with our friends over at APD Policy to create a handout that should be, I believe it's available on group site. It's also in the handout section for those of you who are currently attending this live. To talk about what to expect from an interview and when to expect an interview. Essentially, most applicants for new non-Magi benefits will get an RFI append for an interview, and that interview will happen with an ODHS eligibility worker, and that will have to happen before they can receive benefits. So if someone qualifies or potentially qualifies for OSIP-M, that interview will happen at both intake, so at time of application, and at time of renewal, with a small caveat for some folks who are assumed eligible. And we're not going to go into those details, but we could definitely do that in the future. For a Medicare savings program, applicants will need to do the initial interview, but that will not trigger at time of renewal. For long-term care, there will be an interview at intake, and then also that home assessment that we talked about earlier, that assessment that's done by a different group of folks over at APD. That assessment is something that does need to continue to happen at time of renewal. And unless someone is an assumed eligible, they will also have to then do that interview with an eligibility worker at renewal as well. The interviews focus on going through anything about the application that either the worker or the applicant or member has questions about, and really focuses mostly on confirming financial eligibility. But it also is an opportunity to talk to a trained worker about benefits, about eligibility, and also to receive choice counseling to help people make the most of their benefits. And to navigate, for instance, if their program is one where they would end up in a CCO, the CCO choices and things like that. So it's it's really helpful for our staff, but it's also really can be a really helpful opportunity for the interviewee to better understand their benefits. We have some quick notes about minors who might be being evaluated for non-Magi medical programs. I do want to start by saying that when people apply, they apply for medical, and then the system decides whether they should be evaluated for a Magi or non-Magi medical program. So I wouldn't think about it as someone specifically trying to apply for a specific medical program. They're applying for medical, and then the system will give back what is being evaluated for and why. So specifically when it comes to minors, if you have an unaccompanied minor under the age of 18 who may be eligible for non-Magi programs, they may find that an adult signature becomes required at the time of the interview. So a truly unaccompanied minor may have some trouble navigating into non-Magi because we need a parent, guardian, authorized rep, or some other adult acting responsibly on their behalf. And note that that is under the age of 18. So anyone who is 18 or older can sign for themselves. Just a little different from what we're used to for Magi. That asset verification system is not used for anyone under 18 years. So that AVS form will likely not be needed for someone under 18. Those are just some things to know about non-Magi and minors. And we're wrapping up by giving a quick teaser for these details and a whole lot more is going to be included on a newly revamped family services manual that will become publicly available and also become sort of the Bible for our workers with a lot of eligibility and process details. So just know that March 1st, the newest version of the latest and greatest family services manual will become available, and we look forward to sharing that with you too, especially for folks who have really weedy questions and we really want to dig in and see like what is the official word on different scenarios and situations. So with that teaser, I think we're going to
That's a great teaser. I'm really excited about the family services manual. We've been waiting for
good
a lot of this information to be in one place.
Now I see that there are a lot of great questions. So
there are.
Do we want to go chronologically through, or what do you think?
Yeah, I think that works because the first ones are really about AVS and resource verification, and then the questions move on to the other topics. So I think that's a great way to go. And I'm going to start with something that's actually even before AVS, which I'm not sure maybe this is a question for Janelle, is one now, and I'm not doing the extended medical.
Hi, this is Christy Taylor. I can actually take that. I'm with Magi Medical Eligibility Policy. That's a super good question. And the answer to that is actually no. That is actually one of the out-of-scope programs for one. At this time, we will eventually build it in. So our workers will evaluate that program outside of one and still put it in our legacy system. And just for those who don't know, the extended medical program is specifically for people who were receiving parent and other caretaker relative coverage and who start getting either earnings or spousal support income that puts them over income for all other programs completely, and it gives them a period of protected continued coverage. So I thank you for that question. That is actually one of the last programs that has to remain in our legacy system.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I'm actually trying. Okay. Okay. There's questions about long-term care, which I'm going to save. Do resources include checking and savings account balances?
Yes, they do.
Great.
Yeah, anything in a bank account.
Yep.
That you can access, I guess, is the caveat, right?
Jessica, why don't we popcorn back and forth on questions to make sure that we're both filtering, having an opportunity to filter what's here.
All right. And I have a quick question. Someone went and prioritized these questions. is that?
Oh, I just put some flags. That was me.
Okay.
Mhm. We
I
can
will,
ignore my prioritizations, but
okay. We have some questions that I think are out of scope, but I'm going to save for later.
Mhm.
About like what the workers are doing separate from this application, the application processes we've talked about today. We have a question about, let's see, if a 65-year-old is or older is undocumented and filling out the application, do they still have to report resources? And I can take a first stab at this, which is anytime the resources pages come up in an application, that means that the one system thinks it needs it, and so we need to provide it. So if the resources shows up, oh, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm hard of hearing. I interrupt unintentionally. So this is Natalia. Basically, as I understand, they're applying for emergency Medicaid. So they still to follow the same rules for income and resources as everybody else. The only exception for them is they do not have to meet the LPR or citizenship status. So the answer is yes, they have to still report resources and income as everybody else because the program requires it.
Thank you so much, Natalia. I think the next couple questions are about AVS. Deanna, do we want to go into those next?
Sure. We definitely have questions about AVS being the AVS form being emailed. We clarified it can be faxed in or mailed in. Is there a place where it can be emailed?
And that would be either by the applicant themselves or a community partner helping.
Or the community partner. So I'm not sure which one of our subject matter experts can help answer that.
This is Natalia. I can try to answer. So emailed, can we email it, or is it if community partner or customer can reach you on it, who emails whom?
Yeah.
Well, I think
I have a proposal that I want to see if folks who are experts agree or not. Could a completed and say scanned in AVS form MSC 2639 be sent to Oregon.benefits? And if it does, will it be worked and resolved?
yes, that's where I was going. Thank you, Jessica.
Can someone verify?
So this is Janelle. So on a policy level, yes, it can be emailed. Where specifically that should go, it could probably go to Oregon.benefits. I don't know how quickly it would get to the correct worker. If they're working with a local office, that local office should have their own email, or maybe the worker had given it to them. So I'm not 100% certain on exactly where each one should go. It kind of depends on if they're working with the VEC.
I'm going to ask sorry, I'm going to ask a bigger picture question, because resource verification, it wasn't something we put into the slides, but that can take up to 14 days, right? That is a process, the whole resource verification process. So we don't want to do anything that delays that process unnecessarily. My question for the teams, even if we can't answer it today, is for us to put our heads together and answer the question of what are the best ways to submit that AVS permission form so that we don't hold up the resource verification process.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, I heard
This is Joey. So I'm with the VEC Central Office, and I can speak on behalf of the Oregon Benefits email box, but I just want to clarify that the process documentation that our staff will be using is done in partnership with ET SMEs. I did just confirm, though, with one of the process consultants with ET that there is process documentation available for VEC staff. If they receive it via email, they should be able to get it to the right place. But we will just basically create a task in the system and then send it to the local APD office. So the end result is still the APD office, but it can be sent to the Oregon Benefits email box. There is process documentation for staff to be able to know what to do with it.
And there may be a delay because it can be several days until you get to that. And then it still needs to be sent to the local office. So what I'm hearing is that if we can help community partners know how to help the client get that form to the local office, that would be the most direct and quick way to do it.
I am also thinking that if you can upload it through applicant portal, that may actually be the faster way. Then there's no figuring out where it goes.
Thank you. Somebody's already doing that. And we do now have an option to upload miscellaneous documents at the end of the applicant portal application, at least in many cases. So thank you for verifying that it can be uploaded to applicant portal, and that might be the quickest way to get it into the system. Yes?
Yeah, I'm hearing that this is going to warrant more conversation. So I think for now, can I say it
Yep.
can be faxed, it can be mailed, it can be emailed, it can be uploaded, and we'll go hunting for more details on if there are any differences in someone's experience they might have based on which mode and which workers, you know, versus like local office versus the VEC. Or also, I want to add in
Right.
also anyone could bring anything into a branch office. Those are all
Great.
options, and we'll see about
Yep.
how good those options are once we really dig into it.
Thank you. I do also want to make a clarification based on some of the questions here, that resources are asked about not just for those who are 65 and over, but anybody who might be eligible for non-Magi medical. So it is not limited to those 65 and over. So I'm sorry. So I just want to clarify that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it will queue for if they indicate blindness, disability, the non-Magi questions, but it may not be required for those who are like assumed eligible or if they're just QMB, but it'll queue when it needs to, basically.
Mm-hmm. And if there's a section in the application, it's there for a reason, so we should honor and complete it. I did notice, I'm fairly certain that the current PDF version of the MSC 2639 it doesn't have a smart e-signature on it. So I don't know if that functionality exists, and we'll have to chase that too.
It does not. So the PDF doesn't have the smart e-signature, so it must be physically signed or do the electronic verbal, telephonic signature. We've been going over exactly what language to use. The telephonic signature through the one system. Typing it into the PDF does not work.
Okay, that's great clarification.
Thank you for clarifying that. Yep.
No e-signature and no signature by a community partner. I want to say that
Right.
again too.
We're tight on time, so I want to move to some of these questions about long-term care and how somebody can apply for long-term care if they already have benefits but haven't been evaluated for long-term care.
I thought we were going to do that in a separate webinar.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's a good point. We certainly can do that. Okay, Jessica, what's next then?
Sorry, there's a lot of questions, and they're good questions. Income. So let me go ahead to income. Regarding income, are there any certain amounts that are like a reportable threshold? Is the question. Is there a threshold for reportable amounts?
For APD, there is not a threshold. For other programs, I believe there are, and I'll let them speak to that.
Hi, this is Christy Taylor. I'm not sure what that means, but what we need everyone to do is enter all income a person receives.
Regardless of the amount.
Regardless of the amount. And the system will do the calculations appropriately.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I think there's also a question here about a signature. If there is a minor applying, they are an unaccompanied minor, they end up in an interview for non-Magi medical services and they don't have an adult to sign, what happens?
So if they don't have an adult, like if they don't have a authorized representative, parent, or guardian, then an adult acting responsibly on their behalf can sign the application and get that done for them.
Thank you.
Yeah, we definitely have enough long-term care questions to do a whole new webinar.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I'm so sorry for those who had really great questions that are going to have to wait a little bit, but I think we want to do this right instead of quickly.
Absolutely. And these questions will inform our future sessions. So let's take one more question because we're really just past 10 o'clock now.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see if we have one more question that we can answer here. I'm scanning.
We also have a lot of questions relating to serving folks who are unsheltered, houseless. And so that might be
Yes.
another future focus.
Thank you. Those AVS forms are currently being requested in the applicant portal system. If you haven't run across it yet, you may. So that's why I wanted to make sure that you're aware of them to answer one of the questions that's here.
In the one system, but it will not be visible in the applicant portal, just as a clarification. The AVS form doesn't show up anywhere in applicant portal. It is a RFI that happens on the back end. So workers see it.
Thank you. All right. Lots of abbreviations, maybe a need for some watching our abbreviations. Thank you very much for mentioning that. I think I'm going to call it there and say these are excellent questions. Thank you for attending today. Our intention is to continue to answer them with future webinars, so please sign up for the next one, which is, I believe, the 3rd Wednesday of March. Gosh, I hope I got that right. Basically, same time, same place, but March. And your registration link should have registered you for all of them. We will continue to offer more based on what you've asked today. So thank you everybody for attending. Thank you especially to our subject matter experts who are here to help answer and help create this content. We're all learning together and we love it. So thanks everyone for all the work that you do. Community partners, you are amazing. You know how much we value your efforts, your work. And I'm going to call it at that. Thanks everybody for joining.
Thank you.